Alrighty, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Comics Run the World podcast. As always, I am your co-host Mateo. I am accompanied by my other co-host Frankie. Today, we got yet another very special guest on the podcast. I stumbled on his project on Instagram, and safe to say, it was a blessing in disguise because it was great. Without further ado, we got Armand. How you doing?
Hi guys. I thank you. I'm honored to be a special guest as opposed to one of the plebeian normal ones. Thank you for having me on. For those of you listening, I suppose lightly seasoned comics artist. I work full time professionally in the industry. I studied at the Joe Kubert School, and I have worked on a number of independent projects and a lot of more stuff that I either can't talk about because of fun legal reasons or that just kind of died in development and will never see the light of day, which is par for the course for the industry. But the guys invited me on, and I will never turn down an excuse to talk about myself and my work. So thank you both for having me.
Of course. Yeah, Mateo found your Tales of the Frog Knight first and then sent it over to me, and I just like instantly gravitated toward it and instantly backed it on Kickstarter. It was the first thing I've ever backed on Kickstarter.
Yep, me too.
I've gotten close a lot of times too with some indie games, but yeah, I just fell in love with the art style especially.
Well, your support means the world to us. We are even now still very over the moon and very, very humbled by the outpouring of positive responses and energy for the project. And now that we're wrapping it up and finally getting the last of the orders shipped out, which that has been just a whole hassle and a half. But now that that's all kind of taken care of, we are well underway working on issue 2. So hopefully that will see the light of day later this year. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. But yeah, we prepared just some questions for you about Frog Knight and just as you're like working on comics and what that's like. But I have a fun, simple one to start off with. But what made you choose specifically a Frog Knight? What made you go?
Okay. So this is gonna seem really cynical. In a way it is, and in a way I've also become very attached to the character, and now it is in many ways my baby, so it's okay. Frog Knight was born out of complete random happenstance. Someone requested that I draw, like a knight that's a frog, as you do, and I drew a picture of a frog knight. And it was a drawing. It was not intended to be anything special. It was just a fun little thing, and people really, really ate it up. And at the time, this was a few years ago. At the time, I was still newer to doing the whole like full-time artist thing. I was spending a lot more time paying attention to things like the algorithm and my interactions on Instagram and things like that. Just trying to get traction. With the understanding that that's important, especially for a burgeoning young artist, and that drawing kind of hit big. I don't know exactly what people responded to. I have found that people love frogs. People really like cute things that seem really depressed, and knights are always cool. I love drawing knights. So I drew another Frog Knight piece, and then another one, and people really responded to them positively. And as I went, I began to, personally in my head, sort of build the slight lore. And with every illustration, it's like, oh, well, like, what's the world look like? What's his deal? And over time, a character and the world around him began to take shape in my head, and I kind of leaned into that. And again, it was one of those like, oh, this is a fun thing I have in my back pocket. I'll use this eventually, maybe one day. People seem to like it. And then I reached out to one of my good friends who's a better writer than I am and has I don't want to say more free time, but free time that is differently. It's constituted very differently. All of my free time is spent drawing because I don't have any free time. So I'm working all the time on other projects. So Frog Knight was never going to be something that I could shoulder the burden of 100%. But I had an idea, I had a character, I had a world, and with Bigby's exceptional writing skills and just help in taking some of the burden off of me, it really kind of came together. It really coalesced into something I'm genuinely proud of. And of course, I took all the scripts that he gave me and completely butchered them, and wound up throwing out a bunch of stuff. But that was on his request. He's never written for comics before, so we have a very fluid sort of a working style in which I basically throw ideas to him, and then he throws back a sort of the skeleton or even a full script, Marvel style more or less, and then I filter that back through sort of my vision of what the world and comics should be. And then we argue over the minutia of dialogue and semantics. We're still right now going back and forth on some edits for the current pages we're doing. But it all came together. And while I wish I could redraw the first issue, as many artists I think often do, looking back on the work, I have no regrets. And this second issue I think is going to be something very special. There's a noticeable and exceptional leap in quality, if I can say so, while still being somewhat humble. So
Don't doubt it at all.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
We're very much looking forward to it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is really awesome. I mean, yeah, just like what Frankie said. I was just on our Instagram page, and I just went over to like the Discover tab on it, and the first thing that caught my eye was one of the drawings for Frog Knight. So I clicked on it. I read like the caption and everything. Went on the profile. I was like, "This is something really cool," because I attended Baltimore Comic Con, I think, a little bit prior, and I just got a comic book that is called Council of Frogs. So I was like,
Matt stuff. Yeah, no, his is great. Me and him actually just we just did a small indie show in upstate New York, and we got to we had never met in person. But being an artist online, you do make art friends, and he is a fantastic guy, and his stuff is excellent. He's actually we have him down to be doing a pinup for the second issue, but don't tell anyone. We haven't announced this yet. But yeah, no, Matt's stuff is great. Council of Frogs is awesome, and frogs. People love frogs. Frogs move.
Yeah, I'm one of those people.
Well, I'll tell you something else that I've discovered, and this is just this might be completely anecdotal. I don't have any actual facts to back this up, but I found that you can get away with a lot more, and people are a lot more receptive to certain types of storytelling and certain types of worlds if you just like slap animals in there. Like just medieval comics aren't really a big thing, especially in a lot of Western markets. And I don't know if that's just because it's hard to kind of sell those stories to people. You don't find as many, like sword and sorcery or particularly like low fantasy comics. You'll always get like your D&D stuff, and the stuff that's going on right now with Conan is fantastic, with Jim Zub and Rob Delator on some of the most wonderful, beautiful Frazetta throwback art I've ever seen in my life. But you don't get a lot of like really low fantasy stuff. You don't get a lot of medieval comics without magic or a little bit of like wonder in there. So if you tack on that sort of animal Redwall mouse guard kind of thing, people are a lot more receptive to it. And again, that's totally anecdotal. I don't have any proof to back that up, but I find that things like period pieces and stuff like that seem to have a much wider audience if there are animals than if you were just trying to sell, it's a comic about knights or it's a comic about 1920s gangsters.
Yeah,
that was a complete digression.
No,
but, they just popped in my head.
Yeah,
one thing I've like fallen in love with recently is Usagi Yojimbo, which is a rabbit samurai. So
yes, is that a spin-off of is that in some way associated with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I think
He has crossed over with the Turtles countless times,
Okay.
and they were like conceived at around the same time. So he does very often like correlate with the Turtles, but he's like
Yes.
it's a separate thing.
I know of it. I haven't read a lot of it, but it always looks very cool. People do a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
fan
yeah.
art of it.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of speaking of what you just said about just slapping on like the whole like animal, make everything into animal, so it's more like not really accessible, but more appetizing to people in a sense. Kind of reminds me of, and I don't know how like valid this correlation is with George Orwell's Animal Farm, where it's kind of like that concept where everything is just like more like animal and like in a farm base, trying to convey this very powerful and relevant message. But I feel like if people read that and it's just a group of men and just government and stuff like that, it would just be boring. But since it's like animals in a farm, and it elevates it to a completely different level. So I think, from what you said about just having like something that's not really as popular as one would want it to be, but have it with like animals and such would kind of make it, in a sense, people will gravitate more towards it.
I mean, I definitely, yeah, I could, you could probably, smarter and more eloquent people than I could probably, delve very deep into the sort of like narrative separation that comes about when you set it in a world like that, where it very much represents, the real world and real, ideologies or policies or whatever, but it has that veneer of, separation and can thusly act as a sort of commentary in the same way that, science fiction has often throughout its history been utilized to make statements on personal ideology or real world issues. But if you filter it through even the thinnest veneer of like, oh, there's spaceships, or it's not quite, it's not quite real world, but it's close enough that you get the idea. Maybe that makes it more widely palatable to people. Maybe it's just it
Yeah.
allows you that extra layer. I mean, um, I'm a big fan of people with like of comics and stories in general that have something to say and are done in a very like, um, creative and well planned way. I'm not that kind of a person. I always need people to bounce my ideas off of because my stuff is really, for lack of a better word, cliche. Oftentimes, I write in cliches. I'm not. I'm really good at. I really enjoy making worlds and stuff, but when it comes to writing stories themselves, my predominant training is not as an author, as a writer. And while I like to write, it always needs a little bit of magic from someone else who's a bit more well versed than I am. Um, so we're not shooting for the moon in terms of subtext in Frog Knight, but I do love when that exists in other people's work. And sometimes it can be subtext. Sometimes there's definitely stuff in Frog Knight that's kind of overt text, I think, and a lot of it's more about, I guess, like sort of like depression and honor and vague ideas of chivalry and all that kind of stuff. And because Frog Knight is a totally silent character, it invites the reader to sort of map their energy onto him in a way. There's a lot of gray area there. But yeah, I mean, I think that circling back around to the whole Animal Farm sort of sci-fi real world stories once removed, I think that there is a, setting it in a world like that is in many ways recognizable as the one we either do live in or have lived in, or a historical world, but you add that sort of extra layer of, the sort of magical veil of, well, it's almost like us but not really. I think that makes it appeal to people more widely than just seeing things reflected back at them. Again,
Yeah.
all my personal thoughts, that I'm just spouting right now. I have no, actual evidence to back this up. It's been a long time since I've cracked open any kind of academic text. College was a long time ago for me now.
Like you were saying, we were just talking about with one of our previous guests, like silent characters, Braden Boyd. Um, I I love silent characters. I'm a big fan of the Zelda games. Link is a silent character. What made y'all want to make the Frog Knight a silent character? Like, did y'all discuss that, or was that just always going to be a known thing going into it?
Weird, that was always there, and not because there was a plan, not because I wanted. I'm sorry, I just had a thing pop up. It's showing me my settings, and I don't know why. Okay, I'm going to close out of that. I have no idea what that is. Okay, cool. Uh, he was a silent character from the beginning, just because it felt right. Like he was always so depressed looking, and he was always so sad, and he was like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but in my head, I never wanted to impose upon the character anything more than I could show in just his face and interactions with people. It never felt right to give him a voice by the time we really decided on the character, just because of when you create a character, when you draw a character, even if it only lives in your head and in sketches, these things grow organically. And
Mm-hmm.
it organically just kind of came about that, well, he doesn't talk. He shouldn't talk. Um, and when we started writing it, that was exactly where we started from. And the result is now we can do a lot of really fun stuff with other characters, because when you have a silent character, a lot of the story has to be told through how other people interact with him. And in that way, Frog Knight is, while he does have a story and he does have an arc, and there's a lot of stuff we have planned for later that really brings all of his plot threads together, and makes manifest his big sort of narrative, the culmination of his narrative in the final story. Uh, it's a really cool way to explore other people's stories, like all these characters that he bumps into and passes through their lives. Like, you can do just as much with them, uh, just by way of interacting with them and how they interact with him. So we've like stealthily used him to tell other stories, and I'm very fond of saying there's a couple characters in like the first. We have some arcs planned. There's a couple characters in the first arcs who are sort of the actual protagonists, and Frog Knight he's like the hero who moves the story forward. But there's other people who are having their stories fulfilled before his. And it was just fun. It was just an interesting way of doing things. We ended up doing the short story format, like 5 or 7 pages, purely because when it started out, we were doing it in our free time, and it was a lot easier to do 5 pages at a time than it was to plot out a whole book and do that. And it just kind of took off, and it stuck with us. So yes, always quiet, always quiet.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of silent protagonists. I think through the art, like, you can display so much more emotion than I guess people like think you can. Like
Yeah.
I said, as a big fan of the Zelda series, like, so much emotion is portrayed through Link, and in just the first issue of Frog Knight,
Thank you,
you got
thank
to
you.
know the character even without any words. Like, I got to know him, and like what he's like you said, depressed. I think he's like very to himself. Yeah.
I mean, it has. I think silent characters work the best when you give them that room for people to sort of to sort of transpose onto them whatever they think they should be thinking, whatever they think they should be feeling, because it allows a little bit of a connection with the reader in that way. It's a very like basic and kind of ham-fisted tool of being like, look at this man who says nothing. Don't you see yourself in him? Um, but it has also, to what you said about the expressions, it's also made me a better artist, especially on issue 2,
Hmm.
because I really have to fight to do a lot of to do a lot with a little, um, and it's definitely made me a better cartoonist. there's a lot of expression and energy in the new pages that I've been dealing with that wasn't even there in issue 1, and it having to focus exclusively on storytelling by way of reactions and facial expression and like body it's a big and important facet of comic book art because it's a static medium inherently. But it's definitely having to forcing myself to focus on that has made me improve vastly. So I can't thank past me enough for deciding, just make him mute. It's fine.
Awesome. One of the things that I really took away from reading this was the fact that it starts off with just like little stories of the Frog Knight helping people out, fighting other bandits and what have you. And at the end, it seems like we're starting to have a narrative. And what I really liked about that is just the way you introduce the world through anthology stories of the Frog Knight, like you said, bumping into random people that might have further implications later on the line. Just like I feel Sir Levi and the Brotherhood or the group that he's part with, seeing that later on might expand much more than that really sentimental scene with him and Frog Knight. And I just really like the fact that how it starts off as an anthology, then it builds up to an ongoing linear narrative, and that's something that I really enjoyed and something that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a story start that way. I was just going to say that.
Yeah. I am so very happy and excited to hear you guys say that, and also to then say to that you have no idea what's coming. So what happened was, and I've talked about this. Me and Digby and I have talked about this other places, but the way that Frog Knight happened, we basically wrote it in reverse. When I reached out to Digby and I said, "Hey, I think that there's a lot of traction behind this character. I've kind of fallen in love with this thing I've put together, and you have expressed interest in doing some writing for it. Can you put together like a script for something? I think we can really do something with this." The story that we came up with was like Digby handed back to me a perfect 4-issue like arc. And I loved it. There was some stuff to tweak, but I absolutely loved it. I loved it. It had energy. It had like emotion and drama. It had a lot of pain. It revealed a lot of the Frog Knight's backstory and his motivation. And then it had this big, grand, like not in scale, but in narrative terms, a grand finale, which in Frog Knight terms is actually quite quiet. In keeping with the sort of energy and theme of the book. And I read through it and I said, this is fantastic, but this is the last Frog Knight story we should ever tell. Because this is the story that closes the book on his narrative, on this chapter of his life. So we started working on the rest of the stuff with the understanding that everything we do is working to that story. That story is the end. And because we started there, not only do we get to seed things here and there, do we get to set things up, but we also knew going in a lot of the world already. We knew that there was going to be other orders of knights, like this order of Talon, like they would be the enemy faction, for lack of a better word. We knew that would be something. We knew about certain characters. We knew about certain things to go in. And in doing so, we kind of had a lot of the world vaguely put together. And in many ways, it still is vague. I'm a big believer in a lot of gray area, both for creative freedom and also because it's, I think, more fun to imagine things than it is to just be told, here are all of... Look, I love Lord of the Rings. 80% of those books is Tolkien saying, and then they walked west and there were big trees, and describing in absolute detail the world with the intention that you can go back to that map and follow exactly their path. I love maps. I love Tolkien. It's too much. I don't. I like to have a little. You can just say and then they walked. And that's fine. So like there's we know kind of where like maybe we have a little bit of a world map for some of the places they inhabit. We don't. I just draw whatever environment feels right. Does an icy tundra and a verdant forest and like big open fields all make sense geographically together? Not really. It's fine. The continent's vaguely big. It's okay. There's a lot of vagaries in there. But going back to the short story and sort of building format, it was very important for us that the short stories, when we started, the short stories were all going to be unconnected. They were all going to be individual. And as we began to write, we, very quickly realized, well, there are way more storytelling options with payoffs and interconnected narratives if we actually let some of these weave together. So now some of the stories throughout the issues are going to be you'll see where they're very clearly connected. They tie into one another. Some characters cross over. There's ongoing stories. They don't all line up in terms of their place in the Frog Knight timeline. So like, all the stories in issue 1 could be many years apart or out of order chronologically with each other, but that's not important because they're not connected. We didn't want to give ourselves too many restraints in that way. And some remain completely narratively free. And it was also very important for us that even if they're connected, even if these stories tie in together, and then they do, there are a bunch of stories in issue 1 that pick up again in issue 2, some directly, some indirectly, and then there are some of those that pick up again in issue 3, and then there are a bunch of them, and I won't tell you which ones because I don't think you'll ever guess, but a bunch of them are all going to tie together in issue 4, which is going to be the big culmination of the first arc, and it's going to be awesome and bombastic and probably bloodier than the other ones. But it was always very important for us that no matter if the stories are connected or free floating, no matter their place in the world, they can all be read independently. There's enough context, there's enough narrative put together that you could pick up not only any of the issues, but any of the independent stories within any of the little tales or chapters or whatever you want to call them, and just read a short story and be like, I get all the moving pieces. Maybe you don't know where it comes from, maybe you don't know where it's going, but I don't, especially because there's going to be so many of them. There's, little 5, 6, 7 page things. I don't want anyone to feel like left out or lost if they pick up the wrong issue. I still want them all to be narratively fun to read, regardless of if or when they mean anything at all. So that's kind of where we approached it with that. It was born out of the necessity of, well, we just have to do this. We have to do it as sort of as low impact and low effort as we can because I'm working in between other projects and Digby's writing in between his real person job. And then it just sort of grew organically, as with a lot of things in this project. We had the great luck of many of the facets of Frog Knight grew very organically over a long period of time, which is not something you always have the luxury of in comics. I think that's what helped us get traction in the first place. That's certainly what helped us be so successful at Kickstarter. If again, I can be a little immodest. Having a long-term release of a page a week over the course of several months and then breaks and teases here and there, it allowed a bit of a fan base to build up organically. So when we dropped the book on Kickstarter, they were all ready for it and kind of ravenous. And again, just purely good fortune. That's not something you can really do with a comic that you need to get out on any strict deadline. So it was all just sort of luck, sort of serendipitous happenstance that helped get the thing going and resulted in the final product being what it is.
Sweet. That's all just interesting to hear,
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope there was something to be gleaned out of that. I don't know. I was just talking there at the end.
I love just listening, just hearing kind of the behind the scenes of what it's like to make not only Frog Knight but just a comic in general. So I love
it's awful. It's painful. I was redrawing I redrew and edited and changed so much right up until we put it out. And now that it's out, I'm like totally fine with it. Am I happy with the art? Not at all. But because it's out, because I can't touch it anymore, I've just sequestered it off. I'm like, it's all good. It's as with every project I've ever done, it's all just a learning experience. Now I'm just better. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I will say that my favorite thing from issue 1 is how you're able to like create atmosphere with your art. So I don't know if this is like a question you even have an answer to, but like, do you have a process of like when you're thinking about just like the atmosphere? Because I know it's kind of like something intangible. It's not like, oh, I like the way you draw like anatomy or something like that. But like, I just think you're really good at able to capture an atmosphere just with your art in the.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
I,
welcome.
I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate that. And the answer to that is both it's yes, there is a process, but it's also not something that can be completely quantified. So when I sit down and I board out my issues and I think about what I want for each of these stories, very like one of a very important part of my process is thinking about the mood that I want for the piece. Um, and I try to figure out what is the energy I want, what is the vibe basically. But how I determine the best way to interpret that is very nebulous. The best way that I can say it is sort of trial and error. It's I can't if I say I want a happy piece. I mean, I know generally it'll probably be more light. It'll probably maybe not as heavy shadows, maybe not as much contrast, lighter colors, kind of a thing. And also I'll look to I will often pull from other media that I very much enjoy, other comics, other movies, things that have the same vibe, and I try to figure out why they feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I really like doing I like doing moody pieces if I can, because a lot of it falls down to just composition. Um, and there are certain compositional rules of if you want to make the characters feel claustrophobic, you can close them in, big wide open spaces, ominous things like that. I don't know. It's like it's explicable. I can explain the process up until I get to and then I figure out what I want, because that's all trial and error and a completely nebulous sense of just me figuring out what the correct energy is. Um, the best way I can say is I try to associate the mood with the physical like environment and atmosphere of the issue.
Yeah.
Like sunny versus rainy versus dark versus I don't know snowy, things like that. I try to tie it to specific indicators for the environment around the characters. And also, there was also a lot of just general experimentation with issue 1, and I know a lot of those stories are there's a lot of like heavy shadows and a lot of like thick blacks and stuff in there, and some of that was necessity, some of it was I was just experimenting, and some of it was very like calculated, choices with mood and energy, but it's a 50-50 process of I meticulously think things through and look for reference and think about what kind of energy I want to impart to the reader, and the rest of it is just going over and over and over again until I figure out what feels right. I see, if I see an image in my head, I have to figure out how to get it onto the page. I can't always describe or articulate it, but eventually it works out, mostly.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So
I wish it was more interesting. I wish that there was
But
a secret method, but no.
I feel like it's kind of good that like you don't have a concrete answer, because like I said, atmosphere is kind of an intangible thing. So like it's hard to put into words and like have a actual answer. So I wasn't expecting one. I was just curious, I guess.
I wish that there was a more articulate way of saying it than just it's a lot of that stuff just comes down to practice, and having done different things and looking at a lot of different material and looking at a lot of different artists and stuff. As with pretty much anything in art, it's just having done it. And I know, like, a lot of time when you talk to people who ask about art tips or how to do things, what they want to hear. I always think about the quote. I attribute it to Mike Mignola. I don't know if I could have sworn up and down I saw him say it at like a con panel once, but I might be out of my mind. But so whoever said this, they're the right ones. But it was when someone asks you how to draw, they want to hear that you wake up in the morning, you put your right foot in a bucket of water, and then you sit down and you draw really well. They never want to hear that you have to practice. They always want to hear there's a secret trick, there's a secret method. And there never is. It's always just, well, it comes down to experience and having done it a bunch. So that's the best I got out of that. Which again, I wish it was more interesting. I wish there was some kind of like fun, pithy thing I could say about just knowing the intangible secrets of the world and how to do moves, but I got nothing.
I feel like
That's fair.
Yeah, I feel like when it's something that you can't when you envision something that you can't really figure out a way to put it down on pen and paper, kind of opens up like the possibility of discovering new things as you draw it, because you can draw it as something like a loose thing, and then you might think, oh, this might be cool, and it's gonna change and revert a lot of things until you get something that it may not be the thing that you imagine fully, but it's something that's still really cool and it's still like the idea that you want to like portray in a sense.
Absolutely.
So I feel like if it's something that's not concrete, it's more open to like imagination in a sense.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right.
I would be a terrible artist, so it's always interesting hearing that kind of stuff. I would have no artistic vision, so I always just like hearing thought processes and that kind of stuff.
I can't really, like, I don't see things in my head. I have a garbage like internal camera or whatever it is they call it. I have to work everything out on the page. I can kind of visualize the vaguest sense of like, this is what it should be. But I can't see an image and then just draw it on the page. I have to work and work and work at it. So, you know, it's just, we all have to overcome whatever shortcomings we have as artists.
True. So, when you were creating the whole Frog Knight comic series, was there a challenge that you faced during the creation process that mirrored an obstacle that the Frog Knight overcomes or will overcome in the storyline?
Good question. Let me think. I mean, it's, I don't know. If I'm being completely honest, a lot of the challenges that we ran into in Frog Knight are, I don't want to say superfluous. I don't want to underwrite them as having been unimportant. But a lot of the challenges we ran into were not in any way like megalithic or derailing to us. It was a lot of things of just, oh, well, I have to brush up on doing page layouts and InDesign. I have to rework with some stuff. I have to get through the artist process of deciding I don't like the coloring and recoloring the same 5 pages 20 times before I'm happy with them. I get, you know, like, a lot of the challenge on Frog Knight is just the standard artistic challenge of personal growth. It's, you become more comfortable with things, you try new things. I guess in the most broad sense, Frog Knight undergoes personal growth, but also a lot of his challenges involve things like dealing with the loss of everyone you've loved, and like sword fighting on great sweeping plains and stuff. Things that don't usually happen in the creation process of comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. we've been lucky enough to not have too many challenges.
That's good.
It's all just me stuff, all me having to figure stuff out. And the biggest challenge is doing it ourselves. Like, I am not only artist, but I'm letterer and producer of all things. I love lettering, so that was easy. But I've never done full layouts for a comic. I've never assembled all that. I've never gotten one printed before. Like, having to do all of the production aspect, that took a lot, and it took a lot out of me. And I was absolutely, completely fried for a while after the Kickstarter. Running the Kickstarter took a lot out of me. That was a full-time job in itself. But also, nothing that I can't speak of without... It's absolutely nothing that I am unhappy that it happened. It was all a wonderful learning experience, and I can't speak ill of my time doing all these things and working through things myself. So I mean, there will be struggles, but I don't think it's anything super correlating to what we ran into personally.
Now that you said you did the lettering, I kind of forgot how much I really loved the lettering in Frog Knight, and I was just talking about with a friend just the other day about how I think lettering is super underrated in comics. I think it's like
the same thing too.
Thank you.
I was just talking about that, and I think the lettering, it's really, really great. It's another thing I think that can establish mood, but like you don't notice it while you're reading it. Like it can establish mood almost like subconsciously. I don't know.
I think that the best lettering is lettering that you don't notice. If you're noticing the lettering, then you're probably doing it wrong. I'm not the best letterer in the world. I don't know all of the things. We did study lettering when I was at Qbert. I have a decent foundation, and I do a lot of vectoring work on the side for other companies. So I'm a dab-handed illustrator. I really love lettering though. Like, even though I'm not the greatest at it, I love it. I love it as a part of the artistic process. I think that good comic book lettering is in itself an art. I would never deign to say that I have achieved such a thing. I think I'm just a humble person who likes to do his own lettering. But I really, because I'm doing the lettering myself, because I have that sort of auteur control over every part of the process, not only do I get to think about the lettering ahead of time, I get to work the lettering into the art. I love using lettering to show dimension to the panel. I love using the lettering. Like, I like to hide edges and balloons behind things to show that there's a foreground and a background. I love to show motion by overlapping the balloons if I can. I try to be really subtle. I'm not a big fan of ostentatious lettering. I don't like changing up fonts for characters if I can help it. And I'm using a very I don't know if rustic is the right word, but I'm using a sort of pared down very, very nice hand lettered looking font, trying to keep the whole book feeling sort of medieval. I don't want it to be too, I want to keep that energy going. I don't want the lettering to stand out as being out of place. And I hand letter all my own sound effects. I make sure that they're worked into the art somehow. I'll mess with them digitally, of course, but I don't like digitally created sound effects. I like the way they're hand lettered. There's a lot of amazing examples of hand lettering worked in beautifully into artwork. I always think of Walt Simonson, and especially his run on Thor back in the day had some truly wonderful and extreme sound effects and sound effect balloons with just the most bonkers spellings of crack and Cthulhu and all those fun things. And again, I just like to treat it like it's another part of the process. It's one more facet of the art that I get to have my hand into, and it brings me great joy.
Yeah, it's something I think if I've over time appreciated something in comics more and more, it's been lettering.
Yeah.
Because I like when you first start to get into comics, I just don't think you notice it, but in a good way, like you said, you don't notice it, but it's a part of the experience. And I think it's really, really well done in Frog Knight.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
I also think that the paneling is good too. There's some parts where it's just you still have the paneling in the background, but the horizon is kind of pops out in a sense. And, I mean, there's a lot of instances where just the characters pop out, like, and flowers. When Frog Knight is attacking those thugs, you can see all like the motions outside of the panel. Kind of makes it more like grandiose in a sense, more like impactful. It's really, really good.
I'm definitely when it comes to page layouts and panel layouts, I'm definitely on the more conservative side in terms of like the shape and energy of panels. I don't like crazy shaped panels. I am not a huge fan of excessive panel breaking, and it's all completely subjective. It's all just a personal thing. I'm a really big fan of uh, sort of a bunch of like artists like Alex Toth and Walt Simonson, as I said. And there's a lot of really great, like Franco-Belgian and Italian artists who I really love. I'm a big fan of Tintin. I'm a big fan of Mobius. I really enjoy Thierry Martin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. There's a fantastic comic called Green Manor by Denis Baudard, who's great. Again, I think I might be butchering that pronunciation, but there's that sort of much more restrained panel layout. Basic squares and rectangles, nothing too fancy. Keep everything inside the borders. And what that does for me, my approach to it is that when everything is so restrained, when you choose to break that rule, it's that much more impactful. So when I go out of my way to have things like, motion lines or characters break the panel, I like to think that it reads a bit more intensely, because everything around it is so much less extreme. We are also doing, in terms of layout, I have to get really creative with it because partially owing to the fact that it's very short stories. There's not a lot of pages to each one. We have a lot of information to cover a lot of the time. So, I usually like to think about the sort of industry standard for a panel count per page in a comic you pick up off the shelf is like 3 to 4 or 5 panels, depending. The average for Frog Knight is we're pushing like 7 or 8 panels a page, which means I have to be really judicious with my placement. I have to be really judicious with the information in each one, especially because a lot of the time I'm going out of my way to try to play with timing and narrative beats a lot more than say you would in a comic where you have more space to play with. And I'm also it sort of exists in issue 1. I didn't quite nail it and everything, but especially in issue 2. I'm a really big fan of the idea that, and this is just as a preamble to this. This is purely because I am initially trained as an artist. As much as I love writing, my truest love is storytelling through art. I am a huge fan of the idea of doing comics without the need for dialogue. If you can tell a story that makes sense narratively, beat to beat, without dialogue, I think that's beautiful. And in Frog Knight issue 1, the first story is the purest distillation of that because there is no dialogue, besides a couple grunts and groans here and there. Then we also have stories where you actually need to say a lot of stuff to set things up, but I try my best to make it read as even if all the word balloons were scrubbed from the page, you'd still understand what's going on. And that's just a personal thing. That's my personal edict in my art. And that makes it hard sometimes because it does mean I am going out of my way to basically add more panels to draw connective tissue between what might be greater narrative leaps, if that makes any sense. So we have a lot of panels. Wrapping back around to our layouts and stuff, we have a lot of panels, and that again means I have to be very, very careful and judicious with my choices for panels. Like I said, as I said, I'm not a big fan of anything too flashy. I'm not a big fan of anything too extreme, and that also, that ties directly into the fact that with a lot of this stuff, I have to be very, very readability is key. So I have to be very simplistic. I have to make sure that the story reads first and foremost before I get all kind of avant-garde and weird with it. And the most I usually do is some panel breaks, or I'll just do, if I have the space, like in Stars, the sort of longer story we did, I had the space for a couple big panels. So I got to do a couple, the shot of him looking at the comets in the sky, and the big shot of like the war on the bridge, the battle on the bridge kind of a thing. I got to do stuff like that and just throw my weight around, and absolutely hated every minute of it because it just means I had to draw more things. But I don't get crazier than that. That's about as nuts as I get when it comes to my panel decisions.
Yeah, I loved hearing you saying like I don't know, I know Mateo feels the same way as I just love like visual storytelling and the need for like not a lot of dialogue, or like you said, sometimes just no dialogue. It's like why I got into comics. Like it's same for me with like video games. I just played an indie game that had literally zero dialogue and I loved it. And yeah, I that was, I guess that's another aspect of the atmosphere of like Frog Night and why I loved it, is because there isn't a lot of talking, which allows like your art and the visuals to really tell a story.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, oh, sorry. I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh no, you're good.
Did I step on someone? Oh,
No,
No, you're good.
Oh, cool. Well, like I guess I hadn't actually thought about this earlier when you had asked me about atmosphere, but there are one of the things that I will often look at when I'm in the need for inspiration when it comes to limited dialogue or no dialogue. There are always some solid pieces of media that I can always pull from. There's stuff like Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, which is a great example of dialogueless storytelling through just energy and expression. There's a film, I don't know if you've ever seen it, called Nosferatu the Vampire by Werner Herzog. It was the Werner Herzog Klaus Kinski Nosferatu remake, and that's like one of my favorite films. It's beautiful and weird and creepy, and there are just huge stretches of either no dialogue and like Klaus Kinski standing there making crazy eyes at the camera, and like stuff like that where it's telling a story through pure mood and action is really what I am trying to bring to the table. And like I said, I think I'm having much more success with it in issue 2. These pages are much more energetic and much more narratively cohesive, to the point where my partner, I show her all my pages as I do them, and she says, "What happened to you in between?" She's like, "There's so much more alive." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks. I know that. You're not supposed to say that to my face." But no, it's very, very much the truth. But again, it's all part of that fun improvement. Ow. It's all part of that fun improvement. Again, that got away from me. I don't know where I was going with that one, but I'm so sorry. Please. Another question.
I do want to say this before I say my final question. Kind of more towards the vein of just like the silent narrative storytelling. There is this one Norwegian cartoonist named Jason, and he super like small like stories, not really that well known, but he has this collection of his stories that's called Shh, which is like a collection of a bunch of his stories that has zero dialogue, and it's I love it. It's like fantastic. I love his art style. It's very much just the silent dialogue and just the art style and uses of animals instead of people. Very much resonated with me when reading The Frog Knight, and I don't know. It just feels like whenever there's either a silent protagonist or just a whole story, just nothing but just visual storytelling, it makes it more interesting. It makes it more riveting, and I feel like it just makes it better than what most are putting out there from like the big 2, the big 3 now. which really just makes it stand out a lot more. It's fantastic.
Oh, I would never speak ill of the big companies, because let's be honest, they pay better than anyone else. But I would never burn any bridges ever. I personally have my own issues with the American comic method. I think that you strip a lot of the individual artistry out of comics when they're made in an assembly line process. I think that there are fundamental issues with breaking up the artistic process. I think there are there are far more comics that I enjoy that have kind of emerged from the Franco-Belgian tradition and the sort of Italian comic schools. That's completely personal. That's my personal choice. And there are still great artists working in comics. But I definitely think that a part of it comes down to a different approach to storytelling. And one of the things with Frog Knight, I don't know if what we did has been any good or has been bad or has just been a thing. But because it's been our kind of baby, our project, we've done it completely ourselves. It has allowed us to work outside of the norm. And whether that has improved or hindered the narrative that we're telling and the book and all that, I think it exists as something that's interesting. It exists as a point of interest regardless, because it's not usual. I would like to think that it stands on its own merit, not just because it is or could be considered a sort of like curio object. But it's there, and people seem to be drawn to some aspect of it. So I can't complain. And like I said, Marvel, DC, feel free to hire me. I am willing to work from I have made the vow that I don't really want to work with other creators anymore. Because it's just too much of a hassle, but pay me. I will draw whatever you want.
Yes.
Yeah. I would love that.
Oh.
I mean, I love, through this podcast, I've gotten a lot more into indie stuff, but I think both have their merits, both Marvel, DC, indie, whichever way you want to go. I just love comics in general, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I do agree that, it has its issues, but yeah, I do think y'all have done something special.
I could go on. Oh, thank you. I could go on a diatribe about all the things I hate in superhero comics. But at the end of the day, I love that comics are being made. I love that there are storytellers who are doing stuff like that. I am such a big fan of anyone else who wants to and is foolish and crazy enough to do comics as a profession. Because God, am I so not in this for the money? If you're doing comics for the money, you're doing comics for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
But I am just happy that comics are being made somewhere, anywhere, if they're still being made at this point.
That's a good point.
If you're listening to this in the future and comics aren't being made anymore, I'm sorry, but your world is worse than ours is.
I mean, if you do go to Marvel, you can do Throg. That'd be amazing.
No, I don't want to. I as much as I love Frog Knight, I do not want to become the frog guy. I don't want to be tied to that. No.
Fair enough. So my final question would be this: looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in your Kickstarter campaign? And what advice would you give to aspiring comic book creators?
All right. Well, those are two very big and different questions, but also there's a lot of stuff I would have done differently in the Kickstarter campaign. Oh my God. And I think that's just, that is just a result of everything that anyone ever told me about Kickstarter came true, which is no matter how well you plan for what you think is everything, you're always going to mess some stuff up. And we totally beefed a couple of things. We tried desperately to plan for all the possible contingencies, but we're still delivering the book late. We're still delivering the book a couple of months late, which, by Kickstarter standards, a couple of months is, it's small change. We're not 3 years late, but I feel terrible about it. Just a combination of never having done it before, not understanding the logistics of what we were going to be doing. The biggest issue, and I know it doesn't sound like an issue when I say it, but the biggest issue that we ran into overall is that we had way more backers than we thought we were going to have. And that dramatically and incredibly slowed us down. We thought for sure we were going to get maybe 200 backers, and that'd be easy and manageable because it's just the two of us. So we did things like, well, there's a tier where Armand will do a little sketch in the book for more money because, we want to get more money and we can get the thing printed. And by the time we realized exactly what had gone on, suddenly Armand has to do 500 sketches in books. Suddenly we have to print and ship, we would like to print and ship 1,000 books. We're in the middle, we're at the tail end of fulfillment. We have a couple more batches to ship out, but we're two people who work full time. We're moving maybe 100. We're packaging and moving maybe 100 books a week, which is a lot to us. I think it's a lot in general, but suddenly a month goes by and we've only moved 400 copies, stuff like that. We started shipping last month and we passed the halfway point like a week or so ago, and we're still going. I'm still doing, I hate, you hate to say it because I do art for a living, but doing stuff like doing not just the sketches, but also commissions and stuff, that does take a lot out of you. I hate doing commissions in general, but I'm still working on those for the Kickstarter. Getting some of the stretch goal stuff taken care of. It was all delayed and damaged pretty much by scale. Which again, I'm so grateful for the support we got. I'm so grateful for everyone who wanted to see this thing happen. But every new backer is just one more person on this massive pile. Right now we're doing all our international shipping, getting that taken care of, and we got to fill out all the individual custom forms for that. Something we had not initially thought about when we offered international shipping. It's just, no matter what you plan for, no matter what you think you've got covered, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something, and we have learned a lot for issue 2, and going forward for issue 2, we are trying to, we already have the campaign planned. We already have our rough timeline of delivery planned for that one, and the plan is now just make sure everything's completely taken care of. When we ran our campaign, one of our stretch goals, we never thought we were going to hit it. It was like 10, 15,000. I think we did not think we were getting there. We're like, we'll add another story to the book. Oh no, we got there. Now we have to write, and I have to draw and color and letter and format and add in a brand new story. Ah, shit. We shot ourselves in the foot on that one. It's just you can't, and you don't think about that ahead of time. You don't think about exactly how much work it's going to be in the moment because you watch that number. The line goes up and you're like, yes, we're doing it. We're making a comic. And then it ends and you realize, oh man, what did I just do? So yeah, the biggest thing that I learned is that you cannot possibly plan for everything. And the best thing to do is just run a Kickstarter and get completely beaten down by the amount of effort that it takes to run a Kickstarter. Just for a whole month, just posting stuff, trying to get it in front of people's eyes on every platform you can. Because once your stuff has kind of reached your usual audience, well, everyone who's bought a book is going to buy one. Now you have to get outside of that bubble. I'm on Reddit and Twitter and Tumblr and places I've never gone before or don't frequent, and I'm just posting like, hey, this. And, I was also very lucky, being an artist. I have, like I said, artist friends. I had some pretty, I am friends with or acquaintances with some pretty big name creators who were more than happy to spread the word. Having a network of friends and accomplices is great for that kind of thing. But you just got to do it. Like for a Kickstarter, just do it. Shoot yourself in the foot, find out all the problems, mess up along the way, and then when you run the second one, you're better at it. Our backers have been very, very, very lovely and very, very, very patient, and we have in turn tried to be very, very transparent about it. That's kind of the thing we can give them. We are making the product for them. They are our constituents. It's good to be transparent. It's good to try to get them the best product we can. And I will say we have gotten a lot of good feedback now that the physical copies are going out. People seem happy with it. So I am happy that it has all come to this point. And as far as advice for people creating their own comic, oh god, I loathe the possibility that this will come off as just very like soundbitey or quippy, but like the best advice is just do it. That's the secret. Is if you wait until as an artist, if you wait until you're good enough, if you wait until you're at a place where you think you're ready to do it, it's never going to get done, because the fundamental sort of fallacy, the nature of art is that you're always improving as long as you're doing it constantly, and because you're always improving, the things that you have been doing will always seem worse in hindsight, because you now know where there are problems and how to improve on them. So you're never going to achieve a state of goodness. You're always going to see your art as having issues because you're always getting better. And the best thing is to just do it. Just make it happen. If you don't know how to letter, either find a letterer, or there's a lot of really good resources. There's a fantastic book you can buy over at like Blambot, I think, about comic lettering. It's not that hard. I will say, okay, so as with everything, there's a barrier to entry, and the barrier to entry right now for a lot of comic stuff is Photoshop, and Adobe is absolutely extortionate with their prices and completely evil, because they pretty much have a stranglehold on vectoring and layout stuff when it comes to doing like InDesign and Illustrator. I do all my coloring work in Photoshop. It's the industry standard and easiest. I never got the hang of Clip Studio. Clip Studio was, and perhaps still is, the best alternative. They recently went to a subscription model once upon a time. As with anything, you could just buy it and have it like a normal, sane person. But they went to a subscription model because we have to squeeze every possible dollar out of artists who are making no money. So I don't know. I'm not going to advocate crimes, but if you accidentally secretly stumble upon a torrent somewhere, I don't know, whatever, you do you. But yeah, so there is a barrier to entry, but also like just whatever it is you want to do it. There will be an audience for it. I promise that there's always an audience. There's never been a better time to create comics. I know people are always going on about how the industry is dying or this and that is taking over comics. It's not. It's really not. It's just changing, as it always has and always will be. There's never been a better time to make comics as an independent creator, because you have the internet. You can get your comics directly to people. Yeah, you have to fight the algorithms on every website, and social media is an absolute nightmare. But you can still get your stuff out. You can directly print. You can get stuff directly printed. Just take it to shows. Put it in mailboxes of people on your street. There's never been a better time to get comics into the hands of people who want them, without having to go through intermediaries or comic book publishing companies. Self-publishing is awesome right now. It's possibly too easy to self-publish, especially with all this, like algorithmically generated art stuff but whatever. That's not, again, that's do art because you want to do art. Don't do art because you're going to make money, because you're not going to make money doing it that way. But if you want to make a comic, anyone who tells you that there's anything wrong with anything is wrong, and just do it. Just, you have to be slightly or completely delusional to do this kind of a thing. So I don't know. I hope that isn't too like sound bitey. I know it's very like it's very very self-help guru-y to just say, just do it, just do the thing you want to do. But the only way you get better is by doing it. So I don't know, do it.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the hardest part for a lot of people wanting to do something is just doing it. And I feel like once you go past that hurdle of doing it, you're gonna go into like you're gonna have obstacles in your way, but the hardest part is out of the way now.
Yeah. Well, once you've done it, then the biggest hurdle is actually putting it out there, because it's incredibly easy as an artist to do something and then decide, I can do this better. I'm not going to publish this. Once it's done, you got to get it out there, because once it's out there, then you can't really touch it anymore. Then it's cemented in stone, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how badly you think of it. It's out there, and just move on. If you do things and never publish them and just keep redoing them, they'll never get published ever, because you're just constantly improving. When I was studying at the Kubert School, kind of one of the big things they told us initially is they said, like, an important part of this industry and an important part of the curriculum, we're going to give you a lot of work, possibly more than you'll be able to do. And the whole point is that you have to be broken of the idea that the art that you're producing has to be perfect. Comics is, especially American comics, is fundamentally it's much more of a sort of like craft. It's not fine art, it's commercial art. You have to be comfortable with the idea of handing something into an editor, of putting something out on the internet, of getting something in a book that maybe isn't perfect, but it has to be done. Deadlines are the most important part of working in an industry like this. And then after that, one of my instructors, the Tom Mandrick, who's just a wonderful man and a superbly talented artist whose voice haunts me to this day. Just like as I'm drawing, I hear his voice speaking to me, like Obi-Wan Kenobi telling me secrets and chastising me. But one of the things he said that's always stuck with me is, he said, everything that you draw, your least favorite piece of art, no matter how badly you dislike it, is going to be someone's favorite. And that's always, like, it's always stuck with me that even if I don't like the things I put out, and God knows I've put out things I'm unhappy with. I've put out things that I think are rough. I put out things I'd like to redraw, but I know somewhere someone's going to really like it. And at the end of the day, I'm making art for myself. That's the whole reason I do this, is to appease me and to appease the voices that just tell me to draw nonstop. But also, once the art is out there, once the art's beyond me, once the art is outside of my reach and I no longer have any purview over it, well, that belongs to the people who like it. They become they become the readers, they become the constituency, they become the people that I owe everything to. So, once it's out there, it just stops existing for me. I forget that I even did it. Once it's out there, it's gone. It's a closed book kind of a thing. So just do it. Just do art. Just make anything. I don't know. Make whatever you want to make. Just make something.
Very true.
Yeah, that's we've had other indie comic book creators on before, and that has actually been the answer every single time. And it was like, well, kind of our answer. We've said this before, but like him, Mateo and I had like wanted to do a podcast. We had talked about it, but like we just had to do it, and like we weren't very good at the beginning. I mean, we weren't that bad, but like, but like, yeah, like that's just kind of been a theme of like of the podcast, is like when that question is asked, that's usually the answer, because I mean, I just think it's the truth. Like it's with anything
I'm
you do.
actually not. I'm not supposed to admit this, but the reason that's the answer every time is because we all get together at the big indie comic sit down every year. We get together at Bohemian Grove and decide what's the party line going to be. How are we going to lie to the people this year? And the latest one is, you can do anything, make whatever you want.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's the secret to all of this stuff is just doing it. God, it sounds like such a platitude to just say, like, just do your thing, but just do it. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'll read your comic.
I think it's the hardest part of just like most things in life, is just
Doing it.
actually going out and doing it, whether it's like making a comic or whatever it is you're doing.
Oh yeah.
But my final question is, I mean, you don't even really have to answer it, just whatever you want to say. Also, I'll quickly say we don't have like you were talking about like your friends pushing the comic. We don't have the biggest platform, but we will be pushing Frog
Yes,
Knight as best we can.
because
I can
we
promise
Oh,
you
love
thank
that.
it.
you,
We love it a
thank you.
lot.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll do some plug-ola at the end about where they can find all of my stuff. Thank you, I
that
appreciate that.
that was basically my last question, but not really. Doesn't have to be a plug, but like, is there anything you want people to know about the future of Frog Knight? Whether it's vague or detailed, whatever you want it to be.
There is a future. Actually, you know what? Yeah. Let me. Okay, so uh, the exactitude, the grand overall overarching future of Frog Knight is, it's a little vague. We know where we're going. But right now we're working on issue 2. And then after that we have issue 3 and 4 already drafted. That represents the first arc. So those 4 issues are, we're planning to get those out. Hopefully, we want to get all 3 out in the next 2 years if we can. Because Frog Knight did so well, it has pretty much given us a mandate that, we know that there's a readership. We can start to devote more time to this. I can move it from sort of a back burner project to one of my main gigs. So we want to get those out faster and better than ever before. And then once those 4 are out, probably a Kickstarter trade paperback or something of those. So the first 4 issues 1 to 4 will represent one arc. It's actually already referenced in issue 1. If you in the title page, it's I think it's Tales of the Frog Knight first issue, excerpts taken from Wrath of the Night Hunter. So that's the title of the first arc. Make of that what you will. After that, it's all up in the air, but we plan to do more Frog Knight. We plan to continue going forwards. We've got some really cool stuff lined up in terms of guest creators. I have lots of art friends who are interested in doing stuff with that. We've had a lot of really fantastic fan created stuff and things submitted to us for Frog Knight. As well as, like things we have officially sanctioned. We have the Frog Knight theme, which is just badass as all hell.
Yes.
And that's like,
yeah,
it's so cool to listen to.
it's great.
We have some other music we're working on for it for some of the characters and stuff like that. Cause it's a fun and cool thing to do. As far as anything in terms of like publishing or getting it out there, we have had some interest from publishers, but right now we're kind of sticking with maybe probably self-publishing for a while. Just maybe at least until we get the first arc done, just to get it out there. We're not really having any issues in terms of getting the project put together. I like the complete control that we have over it, and people are into it. We did well enough that people clearly want more. So the future of Frog Knight is that there is more. We're very excited. We're to tell some more stories. As of right now, the first we're back to our schedule of weekly page releases. Every Friday, a new page comes out. Right now, on my Patreon at Armand Bodnar, ARMAND BODNAR, we are releasing. I think we just put out the second page of the first story of issue 2. So it's we put them out there weekly. And then we kind of collect them all, and then we'll do all kinds of edits. And the one that comes out in the book will probably look nothing like what we're posting right now in terms of color and dialogue. But we do the weekly releases, so we've got that set up. So going forward for the foreseeable future, new pages every week, as well as I put up like inks over there. I just dropped a spoiler for the next story. I dropped one of the pages of inks. It shows the return of a character from issue 1 and some fun stuff going on there. So that's where we're releasing the story there. And I think that's about all I need to say about the future of Frog Knight. I don't know if there's, it's, prepare for more just abject sorrow, I guess. But we got some cool stuff. The art is absolutely a step up in issue 2, if I can say so, being the guy doing it. But I'm really fond of it. And I think, hopefully, if people liked what we did in issue 1, they will very much like what comes next.
I'm excited.
All right.
I'm
Me
very excited.
too.
I'm actually very glad you just mentioned Frog Knight's theme because I completely I forgot to put it in my notes. And when I first found the post on Instagram about Frog Knight, and I was looking into it. I sent to Frankie that song. I was like, "This is gonna be great" because it was so triumphant and unique and great. And from the images that we saw before it came out, it just fit and
we
very,
we
very, very
definitely
well.
wanted we definitely want to do something with that when we kickstart issue 2. We gotta. I mean, we kickstarted issue 1 just flying by the seat of our pants. Now that we know where we're going with this, I would love to put together some kind of like little trailer or animated thing if possible.
That'd be really
with
cool.
that,
Yeah.
because man, does that theme kick all kinds of ass.
Yes.
But yeah, so we've got stuff. We have got stuff planned, so it's all very exciting. And of course, it's I still have other, like, Frog Knight does well, but it doesn't pay the bills. I still have other responsibilities. I've got a project I'm working on right now. I can't, as with a lot of things, I can't talk about it, but it'll make its appearance later this year. I'm balancing that and Frog Knight and some other stuff in there every so often just to keep the lights on. But it's certainly no longer a back burner side project. It is now very much a main thing that I have going on. So we are super
Awesome.
excited to get
Fantastic.
through these pages.
Yeah, I'll definitely be checking out any other projects you post on social media. We follow you there, and we will gladly be trying to share your projects as much as we
Thank
can
you.
with
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
I appreciate
100%.
it.
our audience. Yeah.
I very much appreciate it.
All
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Do we
I mean
need-
that's
do we need
that's a
Plugola? Is that now
plug
I'm just a
whatever.
dancing monkey?
Plug away.
All right.
Yeah, plug away.
All right. What do I like? Food. I'm a big fan of food. I would like to plug the concept of eating. The concept of human consciousness. No, so you can follow me on social media at Armand Bodnar on Instagram. I don't really post anything on Twitter. I don't post anything more or less anywhere else. I keep a couple accounts open in various places for when Kickstarter rolls around and I have to do cross promotion. But if you're following me on anything that's not really Instagram or Patreon, I'm not really going to be posting there that much. You can purchase original art, prints, and Tales of the Frog Knight in digital form on my website, armandbodnar.com, ARMANDBODNAR.com. Yeah, it's my name and a .com. It's hopefully easy enough. You can get all kinds of fun stuff over there, as well as some like bonus material and things. Once the physical rewards for Kickstarter finally all ship, which is hopefully going to be around the end of the month, we will have physical issues for sale up there as well, which I've been looking very, very much forward to, because I would really love to start selling more physical issues in places that aren't just small local conventions. But so that's where you can find all of my stuff and all of my things for sale. And in terms of anything else, we covered the Patreon, covered Instagram, covered my website. I think that's about it. If you can find me in person, then you will have won the prize, and I will give you a golden copy of Frog Knight. But good luck with that. So
Okay, I'm gonna be on the hunt.
yeah, that's the true challenge is you have to like find me, but not in my house. You have to find me in the wild.
In the wild, yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
No.
Sweet.
Yeah. I think that's everything. And I'm sure if I remember some critical piece of information, I'll berate you guys into putting on a postscript to the podcast.
All right. Well, yeah, that was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. It was cool to just pick your brain and learn more about Frog Knight and just you as a creator.
I would like to express my thanks for you guys having me on. I always love talking shop about the creative process. Even if as with all things forever, I'm not in any kind of an expert, and your mileage may vary, but I love talking about it because it's the thing that I do all of the time. And I'm also always happy to spread the good word of Frog Night, if not just because it means the more that I sell, the more money that I make, and that means I get to make more Frog Night. Every dollar that I make goes mostly towards books and pens and things. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. This was very wonderful, and I'm glad we got to talk through issue 1. I haven't done like a good post-mortem of the first issue yet, but I'll have to put something together sometime.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Again, thank you very much for being on the podcast with us. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, and we're here, and it's fantastic.
I'm glad we finally got around to it. We had just one issue after another. We had to keep pushing, and I'm like, one day we're going to do this. One day I'm going to talk to these guys.
Yeah.
No, it was I was okay being patient because I mean, like I said, Mateo showed me this, and we always talk on Discord. There's been so many messages, like us just talking about how just into the project we are.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm always around. I got nothing going on unless I suddenly do, in which case we have to delay.
Well, we definitely have to do this whenever Frog Night issue number 2 drops. That's gonna be.
Of course.
I'm excited.
Well, I'll come on. I'll do one where I come on and plug the Kickstarter, get the word out.
Do it.
Gotta do all my cross promotion. Yeah, no, I would be so happy to do another one of these for issue 2. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the project. I'm glad you guys read it, and I'm glad some of the stuff actually stuck out. Certainly, there's always the concern of when you're a creator and when you spend your time working on stuff like this, I know the material front and back. I know who everyone is and what everything is and what's important and what's not. But I don't know what people are going to connect with. I don't know what people are going to take away from it. So it's really cool hearing from people who have read it and responded well to it, things that they've enjoyed and things that have stuck out to them. Because sometimes it's what I think and want to stick out, and sometimes it's other stuff that I never thought about. So it's always really awesome to hear that. Thank you so much, you guys.
Of course.
Absolutely. Well, that's gonna wrap up this episode. We are one episode away from our 50th. This is gonna be very exciting.
Oh,
I didn't even know that.
On. I missed it by that much.
I didn't even know we were that.
Have me on again tomorrow for 15 minutes just so I can lay claim.
We got
50.
Prestigious 50th episode.
Absolutely.
Let me come on and just talk nothing but shit about Spider-Man.
Oh no, not Spider-Man.
No, I'm gonna get you guys a hell of a bump. Because rage clicks are just as valid as any other
so true.
interaction on social media.
True.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
That is true. Well, thank you everyone for listening on Spotify. Make sure to check out our social media on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and on Threads at ComicsRTW. Definitely check out Armand and his work on Patreon, Kickstarter, Instagram. Fantastic stuff he's doing. Support all of his projects. He very, very much deserves it.
Agreed.
See it for yourself. He puts a lot of effort in it. It's fantastic.
I need your money. I need your money.
Send them your money.
Please give me your money.
Thank you again for joining with us, and we're very relieved that there's more Frog Night stuff coming along.
Yeah,
a lot more. We're very thankful.
How awful would it be if I just dropped it? If I was one and done.
Terrible.
No, thank you, and again, thank you guys. Thank you to the one person in the audience. I know who you are. You know who you are. Thank you. Everyone else I'm indifferent to, but there's one special person out there.
There you go.
I'll decide who that is in retrospect. Thank you guys. This was very wonderful.
Oh yeah, this was a lot of fun. A lot of great stuff discussed, and I had a really good time. Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our socials. Make sure to check out Armand's socials, all on Instagram, Patreon, Kickstarter, all that for Frog Night and all of his other projects he's doing right now. And yeah, thank you for listening, and read more comics and read more independent comics too.